Welcome back. Well, today's story takes place in New York City over 100 years ago in the year 1918 in a community of immigrants, many of whom spoke Yiddish, a language spoken by most Jewish immigrants from Eastern Europe. And in this book, every now and then someone will use a Yiddish word, and I'll tell you what it means in English as we're reading. And it may also help to know some of the things in the book that are way different from the way we live now. First, what is an iceman? No, he's not a snowman. He's a man who delivers ice for people's refrigerators. Back then, refrigerators were not like the ones we use today. They were wood cabinets lined with metal with a compartment made to hold a block of ice to keep the food cool. Kind of like a cooler, only bigger. We also have to know what a shirtwaist is. And you can guess that it is a woman's or girl's blouse. People worked long hours at sewing machines in factories and got paid for each shirt they finished. And what is piecework? Well, the mother in today's book, in addition to working in a shirtwaist factory, makes and sews things at home and sells them to a tailor in her community. And what is challah? Challah is a special bread of Eastern European Jewish origin, usually braided and typically eaten on special days such as the Sabbath and major Jewish holidays. Let's read. Rivka's Presents. Words by Lori Walmark. Images by Adelina Lirius. Lori earned a BA from Princeton in biochemistry and a master's in information systems from Goddard College, and then a Master of Fine Arts in Writing from Vermont College of the Fine Arts. She worked as a software engineer and computer science professor before becoming an author. Like Rivka's mother, her grandmother worked in a shirtwaist factory. She lives in New Jersey, and her two grown daughters, both software engineers, live in the Boston area. Adelina is an illustrator and designer living in Stockholm, Sweden. Drawing makes her happy, and fortunately she gets to draw every day. Besides drawing, she likes to create miniature things out of paper and clay, visit the cinema, bake cookies, and she loves animals, especially dogs. And some of her artwork is also available as jigsaw puzzles. Rivka waved out the window to the iceman. "Today's my first day of school." Mama lowered her sewing. "Oh, Rivka, I thought you understood. You can't go to school right now." Rivka stopped waving and went to Mama. "But why, Mama?" "Papa is very sick with the flu and can't work. Starting tomorrow, I have to work at the shirtwaist factory, so I need you to mind little Miriam." "When Papa is better, you can go to school." Rivka's eyes teared up. "Yes, Mama." Mama nodded and returned to her sewing. Rivka raced out of the apartment, down 2 flights of stairs, and out the door. Wham! Rivka crashed into the grocery shop easel on the sidewalk. She picked up the stand. "I'm sorry, Mr. Solomon." "No harm done." Rivka stared at the lines and curves on his slate. "Mr. Solomon, can you teach me to write?" "I'm sorry, Bubala." Bubala means darling in Yiddish. He swept the sidewalk. "I'm much too busy." I can help you." "Help me, a tiny little thing like you?" "I can wash your windows." Rivka looked at Mr. Solomon's broom. "And sweep." Work for lessons?" "Yes, but I need to bring Miriam. Is that all right?" Mr. Solomon stroked his beard. "Agreed." The next morning, Rivka swept the floorboards and wiped the counter. She washed the windows and stacked potatoes. While Rivka worked, she sang to her baby sister. "All done?" Mr. Solomon checked his pocket watch. "Plenty of time for your first lesson." "This is an A." Rivka took the chalk and drew a shaky letter A. Then another. And another. "Good, good." Mr. Solomon gave her an apple. "A is for apple, to share with your sister." Every morning, Rivka swept and cleaned and stacked and learned her ABCs. By the time the trees were losing their leaves, Rivka could sound out the labels on Mama's preserves. But Papa was still sick in bed. On Mondays in the fall, Rivka brought Mama's piecework to Mr. Cohen, the tailor. He checked the sleeves and made a mark on his paper. "What are you writing?" Rivka asked. "Numbers." Rivka looked at the squiggles. "Mr. Cohen, can you teach me to add numbers?" He glanced up from his paper. "Well, I can help you. I can make deliveries." He nodded. "Agreed." Rivka came back the next week, and Mr. Cohen piled shirts in the wagon. Rivka pulled the heavy cart along the cobblestone streets. She sang in time to the rattles of the wheels. As she passed the school, Rivka looked at the children in class. She sighed and continued on. When she returned, Mr. Cohen placed a button on the stoop. "First lesson. 1." Rivka touched the button. 1. He slid 2 more buttons forward. "Add 2. 2, 3. By the time the snow flurries were swirling, Rivka could add pennies for Mama to pay the iceman. But Papa was still sick. Every Friday in the winter before the Sabbath, Mama sent Rivka across the hall to clean for their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Langholtz. Rivka dusted and scrubbed and sang to Miriam. The sweet smell of baking challah filled the apartment. While Rivka cleaned, Mrs. Langholtz picked up her book. "What are you reading?" Rivka asked. "The history of my new country. I am studying to become a citizen." "Can you teach me about America?" Mrs. Langholtz chuckled. I do not think I know enough." "I can help you. I'll listen to you recite." "Wonderful idea. Such a schöne Mädel," Yiddish for pretty little girl. Mrs. Langholtz patted Rivka's cheek. "Agreed." When Rivka finished her cleaning, Mrs. Langholtz said, "For your first lesson, I will share what I learned today. In America, we do not have a king." By the time the flowers were blooming, Rivka knew the names of the 48 states and could sing all 4 verses of My country, 'tis of thee. Papa was still sick, but could now join the family at the dinner table. One afternoon in the spring, Mama sent Rivka to buy a spool of thread. When she returned, the parlor was filled with people. "Surprise!" Mr. Solomon said. "Mazel tov," said Mrs. Langholtz. "Congratulations," Mr. Cohen said. "Mama, Papa, why is everyone here?" "It's a party," Mama said, "for you and your teachers." "But how? How do you know about my lessons?" Mama winked. Mama knows. Mrs. Langholtz cut the first slice of honey cake. "For Rivka, because learning should always be sweet." Mr. Cohen held up a blouse. "A shirtwaist for school." Mr. Solomon gave Rivka a pen and a bottle of ink. "A scholar needs proper tools." Rivka beamed. "Thank you, everyone." "Mama and I have a surprise for you, too," Papa said. "I am no longer sick." Rivka hugged Papa. "That's the best present of all." Mama's eyes twinkled. "So—" Rivka clapped her hands. "Tomorrow is my first day at school." The end. Did you notice how Rivka's neighbors helped her? They were doing God's commandment to love their neighbor as themselves, which is an important part of the Jewish and Christian faith. Rivka and her family are not real people, but their story is based on living conditions of immigrants around 1918. Many who had come to the United States from Russia, Poland, Germany, Italy, and many other places looking for a better life. But times were not easy. Like many people, they struggled. And in 1918, a big flu epidemic hit the United States and other countries. And like Rivka's father, some people, got better, but many of them took months to be able to be strong enough to go to work again. And some, like the mama and the girls in this story, never got sick. But times were hard. Unfortunately, many children, like Rivka, had to work and couldn't go to school. The early 20th century, the time of this book, was an era of both business expansion and big reform movements in the United States. Some people started to work to make American society a better and safer place in which to live. They organized to clean up corrupt governments, to combat rising poverty, low wages, poor working conditions, and tenement buildings, like the places where Rivka and her family lived, and the fact that some children had to work instead of going to school. In other words, also doing things to love their neighbors as themselves. So both big things and little things are exactly what the Holy Spirit urges us to do. The Holy Spirit works in all of us in many different ways. Come back next week and we'll have another story.